What's up, everybody? This is Bud with X Mode here today to give you another tutorial. Today is the day that we are going to go through GoPro Fusion Studio in Premiere. And so what that really means? Oh man, that means a lot of good stuff. We're going to be able to go into Premiere and actually fine tune those shots, those 360 shots that always look a little static, boring, and be able to turn those into just really nice, clean, crisp, buttery cinematic shots. And so today's the day you're going to learn how to do this. So let's get started. Okay, so check it out. Well, this is what we got to do. We need to get that data onto the hard drive. So the best way to do it is literally copy the contents exactly how you see them from each of the two SD cards in the Fusion. So once you do that, you'll create a front and a back folder. Each folder represents one SD card. So front would be your SD1 and back, I believe, is it's your SD2. The next piece is just copy that contents into those folders, and then you create a folder above it, and we'll call it like a date that maybe you shot or whatever that's special to you. And you'll go through and select that in Fusion. So let's go ahead and do that now. We'll go to my Fusion Raw folder, and in my folder, it'll be a list of different material that I've shot. And so I'm gonna go ahead and shoot the 12th because there's a specific one that I'm interested in. So now that you've copied all your data, the next thing we need to do is start up Fusion, select the folder, let it generate its previews and do its awesomeness. So first things first, you wanna go ahead and you wanna start up Fusion Studio 1.1. Don't forget, it is 1.1. Once you launch that up, it's going to start up all awesome like it. One of my other monitors. Here we go. And we're going to say add media. All right. So when we do that, we select the 12th, just like before, just like in previous videos. And if you're not really that big into Premiere and you just like the simple stuff, then be sure to check out the latest studio video that we did, Fusion Studio video, and the way you can see that is just by clicking right. Oh wait, it's where is it? Oh, it'll be it's behind my head, right there. That's where it's at. So click there if you want to know how to use Fusion Studio. Now, once we go through this process, it's going to give us the lists of stuff of content that we can work with. You select a video. You figure out which parts you want in that video. You get your horizon set, make sure that's all nice and beautiful and level. Set your stabilization to whatever you prefer, and then export it out. And when you export it out, you want to make sure that it is set up for editing in 5K and let it do its magic. And then once it does its magic, you can then take that MP4 file and import it into Premiere. And so that's what we're going to do. I think we're going to go ahead and speed this part up because I don't think you guys want to wait this long. Told you it's slow. It says, and I quote, processing your footage will take 10 minutes or longer. Oh, 8%. Boring. Really boring. Oh, did I mention this may take a while? 15%. Still going. Oh, hey, by the way, did you guys see the Falcon Heavy launch? It's badass. There he is, doing his thing. Okay, now that we're done waiting on Fusion, we're gonna have to wait a little longer once we continue the process, which kind of blows. As you can see, I've got a buttload of shots in here, and a lot of this content is for the latest upcoming actual video, not just a tutorial, but an actual video that I'll be putting together. So yeah, keep a lookout for that. That's cool. Now what we need to do is get the clip selected, get your in and out point selected, and then create the render queue. Oh, and also we need to make sure that it is properly leveled with the horizon and that your flat color profile has been enabled as well. So let's go ahead and knock that out. Find a shot that kind of is where, you know, where most of the action is happening. And then you're going to want to make sure that it's set up correctly. And so what I mean by that is ensuring that your subject is more or less centered in the clip. You also want to make sure that the trees or objects in which you are working with is level. And you know, like if it's a tree, you want to make sure the tree is going up and down, not up and to the right or up and to the left or sideways or, you know, any of that stuff. So once you have that set up, you want to make sure full stabilization is checked, and you want to click over to settings, and you want to change the color profile to flat. Now, once you do that, it muddies things out. It kind of, it makes it a little easier for you to color grade in post. And, you know, it's not a true log, and it's not really a true flat, but it's better than using the GoPro color profile. It does look better. So, all right, so now that we've got that set, we're gonna go ahead and create an in and out point. We'll say from here to, oh, I don't know, let's play it out a little bit. That looked good. I'll play it a few more seconds for some buffer. There we go, cool. So there's our shots, right? So we'll just use this clip as an example. All right, so now we just need to add it to the render queue and then let it do its thing. And be prepared to wait more. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so now that we have it in the render queue, we need to check settings to make sure it's good before we make it do things. So you wanna make sure that the Cineform 422 high is checked. You want to make sure the 5.2K video resolution is checked. You also want to make sure that stereo or 360, whatever you prefer, is checked, and make sure that your de-warp parallax is turned on. That way it doesn't look too funky. Once you have that set, say render, and it's off and running. So the next thing we got to do is, you guessed it, wait. And depending on how long your clip is, it could take minutes, hours, maybe even days, depending on how big it is. But this one, since it's a small clip, should go pretty quick. So it starts off with the stitching process, and it takes those two 180-degree lenses and it starts to stitch them all together. So kind of what you saw in the preview, but not in low quality. So it's going to go now export it at a super high quality at 5.2K. That way we can take that information, take that video, put it in Premiere, apply the plugins to it, and set up that awesome shot that you're trying to get. So a couple of things you need to know. First is the stitching and rendering process is totally dependent on your CPU. So to put it in perspective, this guy right here, this little guy, that's just a straight up MacBook Pro 2016 model. It doesn't play VR video very well, especially when you're trying to edit through it. And so it is what it is. So, but I have a Mac Pro that I do all my real editing on. It does do graphic acceleration when you're doing your rendering. So it's not as slow as what you had originally anticipated. It does do it a lot better than it did on Fusion 1.0, where it only did software rendering, where it didn't use any GPU acceleration at all. So now that it does GPU acceleration, it does go faster. And it's done. Okay, so now that we're done with Fusion Studio and it's finally done doing its thing, we can go ahead and get started in Premiere. So if you're not familiar with Premiere, I would highly suggest checking out some other tutorials and such that are around that kind of show the process, but we're gonna keep focused on how to use these plugins in Premiere. So be sure to import your media into Premiere, start a new sequence, and you can leave it in the default sequence if you want, or you can do a 1080p sequence. If you're going to be doing overcapture and kind of doing zoom in and flip arounds and that kind of stuff, I would highly recommend doing a 1080p sequence to work off of. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go into here and we're going to say new sequence, which is Command N, and we're going to go ahead and call it the DSLR 1080 25 24. Actually, we're going to do it in 30 because it records in 30. The Fusion records in 30, so don't forget that. If you do it in 24, you're going to have this weird motion blur thing that doesn't really work too well in Premiere. So try to keep your frame rates the same if you can. We'll call this Fusion sequence. That sounds fantastic. All right, so now we have our Fusion sequence. It's already opened up in the timeline, so now all we have to do is just take our video and drag it into the timeline. And there we go. So now it's there. We'll zoom in just a little bit here. And it's loading up. It's fantastic. Go ahead and make these tracks a little bigger so that way we can kind of see what's going on. There we go. So as it starts making its little thumbnails, it usually takes a moment to get done, but it's fine, no worries. All right, and so up here in the program, we can see the Fusion sequence itself. See if we can't give it a little more space to work with. There we go. And we can hit the button, and there we go. So now we see it. Now, you're probably looking at this going, wow, it looks like it's really zoomed in on the head. Well, you're right, it is. And the reason being is because you shot a 5.2K video, you just threw it into a 1080p sequence, and so it's all zoomed in at 100%. So we need to go ahead and back that off a little bit. And the way you do that, and if you're already familiar with Premiere, I don't think you're gonna get this right. What you gotta do is get your GoPro Reframe VR plugin onto that clip. So you go over into Effects here, and you type in VR, and it gives all kinds of the basic VR stuff that's already there built in, and then also the GoPro VR. And so we're looking at the Reframe, and that's the one, it's really the one you're going to be working with the most. Horizon just levels horizon. Layers allows you to add like text, 3D text into the video as it's swooping around, which is kind of cool. And Reframe is really what's used to kind of be able to show those shots, those unique shots you're looking for in very unique angles using the 360 video. So we'll take this guy, we'll drag it over, boom, it's in there. As you can see, immediately it backed off. Now, what I was talking about before is this. If you go into Effect Controls and you got this, and you have this clip selected, you can see that the scale is still at 100%. It will always remain at 100%. It will draw it back the way it needs to be within the plugin, instead of you saying it's going to be 50 or 25% of scale in order for it to match correctly with 1080p. I know that's a lot to digest, but just keep in mind that it's different than working with traditional video. So just use the plugins. That's why they're there. If you don't use the plugin, you try to scale it back, the plugin conflicts with the scaling, it doesn't work right, there's mass pandemonium, nothing good is happening, you just get frustrated and you want to walk away. So don't do that. Just put the plugin in and work with the plugin. Works great. All right, so next you want to start working with the actual program itself. And so the way we do that is we'll take this guy and we'll move him over here so we can see both. Now we can see the video that's being used. You have field of view, yaw, pitch, and roll. Same things that you had before when you were using the Fusion Studio app. Difference is here you can actually do keyframing, which you cannot do on Fusion Studio. So let's see if we can find our magic little 360 that was done here from a friend of mine. Let's see what we got. So here we're coming close. Now it's right here somewhere. There it is. So something pretty easy, pretty simple. And we'll cut this down to kind of put this in perspective. And we'll play it through. All right. So right about there. That's good. So there's our endpoint right there. Okay. But he keeps going out of frame. What do? Oh, well, you just change the frame of reference. That's all you gotta do. And so the way you do that, click on the clip, go to VR Reframe, and we can start making adjustments. And so there you go. So we can start adjusting the field of view. We can start adjusting the yaw. And so we can take that field of view and we can bring it up. And usually they allow you to bring it way in, and it doesn't look really good because you're just looking at just the raw pixels in a very zoomed type of approach, and it doesn't look good. So you can bring it back. I found that about between 35 to 30 works pretty well. Anything lower than that, and you really start to see the artifacting. So you can keep it at 30. You can keep it zoomed in at about 30, and it should be good there. And so now we can go ahead and take the head out of the shot. We can make our adjustments. And so the best way to think about that is always to like kind of use the trees or use objects around there as a reference to try to make the shot look the most natural. And we want to make sure our roll is correct. And so that's, you know, on this setup, it's with the up and down. And so we'll bring it here and we'll play it through. All right, so my head kind of gets in there towards the end, as you can see. So what's to do? So now we can start playing around with the settings and try to find that shot that we're looking for that, you know, kind of makes it all nice and awesome like. And so maybe it's not a real zoomed in shot. Maybe it's just here. So the next thing you want to do is turn on your keyframes. And the way you do that is you toggle the animation icons here. And that brings up, it adds your initial keyframe at the beginning of the clip because we're at the beginning of the clip. And so now as things move on, we'll stop it here and say, well, this probably needed to be, you know, tilted a little more. And so, oops. If you make a mistake, just Control Z, brings right back where it is. Super easy. All right, so we'll bring the yaw over. And then we can go ahead and do a field of view zoom. We'll try to keep it around there. All right. And if we'll play that back, just those quick little two things that we did, here's what it looks like. So there you go. I mean, that's about as simple as it is. So you just go through it, you figure out what works, what doesn't work, what looks cool, what doesn't look cool, and just kind of play with it. If you notice that your transitions or your movements or all that are too sharp and too mechanical, you can always adjust your keyframes and work with those transitions and make sure that they're all set up. You've got these awesome little bars here that allow you to smooth out the transitions the way you want them to look. You can do all kinds of things. And so it makes it look a lot more realistic. It makes it look a lot more, you know, more natural. And so, I mean, that's kind of what we're aiming towards, right? So here we go. So I made a couple adjustments here, just something really quick, just to make it look less mechanical and more natural. And there you go. So there it is. Now it's not so sharp on those stops and starts. So basically that's about it. So you just take that guy, you export it out as a regular 1080p video or whatever you're trying to put that content into, or you can take that clip and put it right into your sequence that you're working on with all the other video stuff you're doing, or say you're putting a nice little awesome video together to show your friends, or maybe you're putting something together for some sort of production or what have you. You can throw it all in there and you're off and running. Last piece of information for you guys. If you have a Mac Pro and that's what you edit with, it does come with the ATI D700s. If you have the D700s in your Mac Pro, there is a known software bug that's been around, unfortunately, for years with Premiere Pro. And I run into this a lot of times when you try to render out either an OpenCL or Metal or any of that stuff. So the way you fix it, the workaround that Adobe says to use is to use the software only rendering. Not only is this slow, but it doesn't work with the GoPro plugins. So what do? Well, I'm glad you asked. Unfortunately, the workaround is not as cut and dry as you would think. The best thing to do is when your sequence and your master sequence is fully complete and you've got those 360 clips in there, render out the 360 clips separately. And once they're rendered out separately using OpenCL, make sure there's none of those black bars that appear from that bug. And as long as that's clean, you can take that rendered content, which will be an MP4 file or a ProRes file, whatever it is that you decided it was going to be. And you take that and you re-import that rendered file back into your project, overlaid on top of your 360 video, export as software only, and you'll be good to go. And so that's how you work around that problem. All right, so that is pretty much all it takes. It's just really your creativity to make sure that it's done in a manner that you feel is acceptable and is awesome and is cinematic or whatever it is you're looking for. You really, the sky's the limit. So it's up to you to figure out how you want to create that stuff. I implore you to be creative, get out there, try to figure out best ways to get those awesome angles that you've never seen before and get it out there and show everybody what it's all about. So, hey, if you have any questions or concerns or gripes, complaints, whatever, comments section, it would be great. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you love to smash things, definitely smash that like button. Have a good one.